Hello Infiniteers, and welcome back to my Zootopia toy box. Today's episode is the one that I know some of you have been eagerly waiting for, because today I'm going to show you how to implement the logic for the mystery-solving mechanic in this toy box. This is the case where Judy and Nick investigate a break-in at this shop, and they look for clues, and they talk to eyewitnesses to track down the culprits. This will probably be the longest episode in this series, because this case requires a lot of logic, alright? Be prepared to spend 3 to 4 hours hooking it all up. But don't let that intimidate you. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. And actually, if you look at the logic diagrams for this episode on my blog, you'll see that the diagrams are a lot simpler than those for the Mad Bomber in the previous episode. The logic here really isn't all that complicated. There's just a lot to it. And so as you look at all the creativitoys here that I've got, and this is just part of them, don't be intimidated. Again, we're going to walk you through this step by step, and there's actually a lot of repetition. So you see there's 3 sets of controls here, for example, and multiple sets of those. So every set of those gets hooked up the exact same way. So it's very simple. It's just a lot of it. Alright, this mission can be broken down into 4 phases, and we'll take this one phase at a time, one step at a time. Phase 1 is the mission setup and waiting for the player to approach the shopkeeper here at the store. Phase 2 is the search around the shop for clues, and it begins when the player talks to the shopkeeper. Phase 3 is talking to the witness once the player finds the clue and figures out where to go. And Phase 4 is the battle with the weasels, which takes place at one of 7 final destinations that the witness will provide. And just so I don't overwhelm you with all of the creativitoys here, like I probably did in the last episode, we're going to focus on this one phase at a time. So let's start by reviewing the creativitoys that I've placed ahead of time just for the first phase. So we have our button, and again we're going to use this to kick off the mission temporarily. That will input into this logic gate, which will drive the mission. And for phase 1, we have a effects generator. We have 2 locators positioned here, one for the smoke, one for the shopkeeper. And we're going to set the shopkeeper up like a mission giver. So we have here a dynamic trigger, a friendly wave generator, and a radar marker. All right. And yeah, we'll focus on just that for now. All right, so for the shopkeeper, for the friendly wave generator, we'll connect this up to the locator sitting right here. To save a little time, I've already configured the wave. We're going to use the Henry costume. He's our shopkeeper. And for the properties on this, we're going to take the generation delay to 0, and we're going to set the behavior under the generated friend options to jump up. So he's trying to get your attention. And this helps distinguish him from the other townspeople that might be wandering around the street here when we get around to putting in the population for the city. Okay, our dynamic trigger, we'll connect that up to our friendly wave generator with an actor connection. And on the properties for this, target needs to be the connected actor. Trigger distance will be 4. And we need a radar marker to bring the player over here. This is the only radar marker we're going to use in this mission, mainly just to get the player started. And under the properties for this, we've connected that as our actor to the friendly wave generator. Beacon type will be a yellow exclamation point. And the beacon location needs to be the connected actor. And in addition to the radar marker, I thought it'd be nice to have a smoke plume to draw the player over here. So we'll connect up our effects generator to this locator in front of the door. Okay, and that's the setup for these toys. So once again, we'll use the button to kick off the mission temporarily. So on the button, a new logic connection, when pressed, will input into the logic gate, and we'll make all of our connections off of this so that later on we can delete the button and hook the real thing up. On the logic gate, on output, we will come over to our friendly wave generator and generate the wave. And on the logic gate, a new logic connection on output. We will turn on the radar marker. We'll activate that. On output from the gate, new logic connection on output. We will turn on the dynamic trigger, and I want this off by default. So from our level starter up here, we'll do a new logic connection on catalyze. We'll have that come over to the dynamic trigger and turn that off. Okay. And on the logic gate here, a new logic connection on output. We'll start up our effects generator. So we will play looped out of the smoke category, the smoke plume. Okay, and that's everything this logic gate needs to do to start the mission. So the player then comes over and talks to the mission giver, and when he does, this dynamic trigger will detect that because it has set up a radius around the townsperson there, around the actor. So on here, we do a new logic connection when entered by player any. First thing we will do is deactivate our radar marker because we don't need that anymore. The player's here. And on the radar marker, a new logic connection when this is deactivated. We will turn off the dynamic trigger because we only want to do this once. On the dynamic trigger, new logic connection when entered by player any. We'll have him come up to the text displayer, and he's going to say out of the missions category down here at the bottom, I need your help. On the dynamic trigger, a new logic connection when entered by player any. We'll have him stop jumping up and down, so we'll come over to our friendly wave generator, and under the generated friend options, we will play looped, and we will have him stand still. Because he now has the player's attention, he doesn't need to be jumping up and down. Alright, and the final thing our dynamic trigger needs to do is a new logic connection when entered by player any. We're going to come over to our randomizer over here and say action, and this will kick off phase 2. Alright, so that is everything that we need to do for phase 1, which again is the setup and talking to our mission giver. And this is all pretty standard stuff. There's nothing unusual here that we've covered. And let me just review this. I'm actually looking at the same diagram that you will be looking at on my blog. So I'm making sure I have not missed anything. And it looks like we're good to go. Alright, so now we are on to the second diagram on my blog, which is the phase 2 and 3, where we're looking for clues. And we are going to have the system here use the randomizer to select one of 6 different clues. All right, and these clues are going to each lead the player to a different place in the toy box, and this way when you play this, it'll be different every time. we're going to use the randomizers, or the replayers here rather, to put down a different collectible, and we have a different collectible tracker here for each. So for this stage of the mission, for phase 2, we have the randomizer, and then we have 3 controls for each choice. And if you look at the logic diagram, there's a gray box around each of these 3 sets of controls, and that box is labeled collectible choice. So we have 6 choices. Each choice contains 3 controls. We have a logic gate, and a replayer, and a collectible tracker. All right? And this is for choice number 2, the same 3 controls for choice number 3, for choice number 4, number 5, and number 6. Okay, so that's how this is organized. All right, so let's go ahead on each of the replayers, go into the properties, and take the playback interval to 0. I have already done that for the other 5 replayers here. Okay, so let's set up each of these one at a time. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a different collectible down in a different location here. So choice number 1 here will be for the mushroom. And you find this in the Gameplay Toys drawer. It's the mushroom collectible we're going to use. So I'm going to come out of the editor. We're going to come over to the first replayer here in the first row. And that opens the menu in the lower right. And on my Wii U, I press B to start recording, and then I have to step off of that replayer to get back into the editor. And we'll place a collectible here somewhere. And let's put this one up on top of the building here. And we will exit out of the editor. We'll step back onto the replayer to get our menu in the lower right. I press B to stop recording and A to clear. And make sure you only press A 1 time, or you'll corrupt the replayer. So you can see that took the collectible out. So for the collectible tracker in this row, we'll come into the properties. We're going to set the collectible type to be the mushroom collectible. And we have to scroll a little bit to do that. And there's our mushroom collectible. And we're going to leave Show on Radar off, because part of the fun of this is having the player actually investigate. They're going to have to look around for the clues. Okay, so for row number 2, this is going to be for the cupcake collectible. And if you scroll over a little bit in the Gameplay Toys drawer, there we have that. So once again, we'll exit out of the editor so that we can step on the replayer here in row number 2. I press B to start recording, step off to get back into the editor. And for this, let's put this in a different location. We don't want to have the collectible be in the same spot every time. So we'll place this one back here behind the store. And once again, we'll exit out of the editor, step on the replayer, press B to stop recording, A to clear. And for the collectible tracker in row 2, on the properties for that, we're going to set the collectible type to the cupcake collectible. And there it is. Okay. All right, the third choice for row number 3 here, we exit out of the editor, step on the replayer to get the menu, start recording, step off. Choice number 3 is going to be the burger. That will be this one. And for this one, let's put this one up on top of the Dusk to Dawn store. So we will place that, exit out of the editor, step on the replayer. I will press B to clear, or to stop recording, and A to clear. And for this one, I'm going to play back, now that I've cleared it. I just want to make sure, because the bounding box on the Dusk to Dawn store is a little high, but it did play back the collectible. That's what I wanted to know. If it didn't, I would delete this replayer and put it down a fresh one and do it again. Alright, so I played back before. I'm going to clear it. Again, press A only one time. That will take the hamburger collectible out. And for the collectible tracker in this row, you're going to set the collectible type to be the burger. I don't think I passed it. Hamburger, there it is. Alright, row number 4. For the 4th row, we're going to use the pizza slice. That will be that one. So we'll come out of the editor, step on replayer number 4. Press B to start recording, step off. And for the pizza slice, we'll stick that around the corner over here. Again, you want the player to look around for the clues. Alright, step on the replayer, press B to stop recording, A to clear. And for the collectible tracker for row number 4, we're looking for the pizza slice. So you can see this isn't difficult, this just takes time, because you're giving the player a lot of choices. You could simplify the logic if you wanted to and just put down a single collectible, or maybe 2 or 3. But then you wouldn't have much variety and it would get kind of boring after a bit. Alright, for row number 5, this is going to be the ice cream cone. So we'll step on the replayer in row 5, press B to start recording. And for this one, let's put this one behind the shop here, behind the Dusk to Dawn shop next door. We'll step on the replayer, stop recording, A to clear. And for the collectible tracker in that row, collectible needs to be the ice cream cone. Some of this repetitiveness I have done ahead of time. There it is. I've planned for ahead of time, and I've made a number of logic connections in advance, so you're not going to have to watch me do all of this, but for this part of it, I wanted you to see how I do this, because this is kind of important as to where to place all the collectibles and how to set these up. Alright, for row 6, we're going to use the crystal shard. Alright, now this one, the idea in the original toy box is that this would correspond to Elsa's palace in Tundra Town. But in this version of the toy box, we do not have that. Okay? So, what we're going to do instead for this version of the toy box is I'm going to come over here to this obelisk. Oop, not that. I want to open the styling menu. And we're going to style this with the crystal theme. And I'll just apply that. If you are building the other version of the toy box, and you can see that looks a lot like the crystal collectible. So that should bring the player over here, because this is the only thing in this version of the toy box that looks like this crystal shard. If you are building Tundra Town and the other version of the toy box, which has the Rainforest District and Tundra Town, then for this, you're not really going to use this location. And so you might style this instead in that version of the toy box with the Zootopia surface here. And that'll just give this a nice plant-looking shape. Okay? But if you're using the other version of the toy box, you're using the version that has Tundra Town, and so this is going to correspond to the Ice Palace. I just wanted you to be aware of that. Alright, so for this last one, we'll step on the replayer. We'll start recording. Step off so I can get back in the editor. And for this one, let's see, where can we put this one that would be a little different? We could put this down here in this corner. Just for something different. And then we'll step on the replayer, stop recording, press A to clear. That takes the collectible out over there. And as before, on the collectible tracker properties for that row, we're looking for the crystal shard collectible. And it's important to have a separate collectible tracker set to a very specific collectible for that row that you're using. Okay, so now all of these have been set up. We have our 6 collectibles in different locations, and the randomizer is going to randomly pick these. So I'm going to show you how to set up these controls for the first choice. And what I do here, you're going to do the exact same thing for the controls in each row, okay? And so I'll just show you one of them, and I've already hooked up the others. So on the randomizer, we're going to do a new logic connection on random trigger 1. We're going to come over to the logic gate and put this in the open state. And I want that to be closed initially. Okay, so we're going to come up to our level starter. We're going to do a new logic connection on catalyze. Come over to our logic gate and close it. You can see, looking at the connecting lines there, I've already connected up the other 5 logic gates. Okay, so for each of the other 5 logic gates, you're going to make the same connection. Come over to the level starter, new logic connection on catalyze, come over to each of these and close those. Okay, do that for each of those other 5. So the level starter needs to close all 6 of these gates. On the randomizer, new logic connection on random trigger 1. We're going to come over to the replayer in row 1 and playback. Okay. And on the randomizer, a new logic connection on random trigger 1. Come over to the collectible tracker and reset so that we can replay this multiple times. Okay. So the randomizer is going to make 3 connections for each random trigger. So random trigger 1 opens this gate, plays back the replayer, does a reset. For random trigger 2, you're going to make 3 connections. You're going to open this gate, play back this replayer, reset that. Random trigger 3 is going to do those same 3 connections for these 3 controls. Random trigger 4 will do the same connections for those 3 controls. Random trigger 5 will do the same connections for those 3 controls. And random trigger 6 will do the same connections for these controls. And I've already made all of those connections, as you can see. It's connected up to all of those. I did that ahead of time to save time. All right. So again, it's not difficult setting these up. It just takes time. All right. So there we go with that. And we're going to come back to these controls a little bit later because there's more to do with those logic gates, but let's keep it simple and just do this one step at a time. Okay, so that is phase 2 basically, is putting the collectibles out here and putting a random collectible out here, having the player look for it, and when they pick it up, the collectible tracker for that corresponding row will get triggered. Okay. So row number 1 here will correspond to this location over here, where we have this mushroom collectible. All right. Row number 2 is the cupcake. That will correspond with this location over here. Row number 3 is the burger. that corresponds with this location over here. You can see I've got some controls at each of these locations. We'll go over those next. Row number 4 was the pizza slice. That corresponds to this location here. There's a pizza slice on the side of that building. Row number 5 is the ice cream cone. That corresponds to the ice cream shop over here. And row number 6 was the crystal shard. This will be different depending on which version of the toy box you did. In this version, it corresponds to this obelisk over here. In the other version, it corresponds with Elsa's Ice Palace, which is over in that direction in Tundra Town. All right. So, on this collectible tracker, this corresponds with this location. And so at each of these locations that I've just pointed out, we have several controls. I've put down some locators. And we have a dynamic trigger and a friendly wave generator. All right. The friendly wave generator at this location will be connected to a few different locators here. And the idea is you want the eyewitness to be in a different spot each time. So when the player gets here, they have to look around for him. You don't want it to be too predictable. And you can reuse some of these locators as we go along. I'm going to reuse this one a little bit later. And so the player will look around a little bit. And we'll hook this one up also. I'm going to put 4 locators on this one. We'll put him over here as well. Okay, and I've already configured the wave on this location to use Cosmo. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do with these 2 controls is what you're going to do at each of the other 5 locations. Okay, and there's not much you need to do here, but we want to set the properties. And for the properties on these, you're going to take the generation delay to 0, and under the generated friend options, you're going to have the witness stand still. When we populate this area later, the townspeople will be wandering around. So this is one way to have your witness stand out, is to just have him standing still. Okay? On the dynamic trigger, we're going to connect that up. And I'm going to connect this to this locator over here. It's kind of near this, landmark. And on the properties for this, target needs to be the locator. And the trigger distance we're going to leave set to 10. No, sorry. We're going to set that to 4. We want them to approach the witness. Which means we don't connect to that locator. I'm sorry. I'm getting confused with something else here later on. We need to do a new actor connection and connect that up with our friendly wave generator here for the witness. Which means on the properties for this, this has to be set to the connected actor. Okay, so that's how the properties should be set there. You should make an actor connection to this. This should be connected to at least one locator, preferably others. And the properties on this, make sure you have this set to generate at random locator, generation delay to 0, set the generated friend option so he's standing still. Okay. Now for the other witness locations, I've already done that. So over here, this is connected up, as you can see, to those locators there. I got 2 of them there and 1 across the street. The wave is configured for this one with Big Al. And the properties are set the same. And this is connected with an actor connection to that. Properties are set like the other one over at the mushroom. Okay. Over at the burger joint, I've got this connected to a locator there, one over by this tree, and another one across the street. And the properties on this one, or the wave on this one, I'm using Agent P. And this is set with an actor connection to there. And the properties are set on the like you see on the others. Over at the cupcake shop, this is connected up to a locator over there, and two of them across the street on either side of those red stalls. And for the properties on this one, we're using Miss Piggy as our witness. And again, this dynamic trigger is connected to that. So there's locators and two controls for each witness. Okay. Over here at the pizza place, I've got locators connected there on either side of the building. There's one here at this street and one across the street over there next to the Monsters, Inc. building. And for the wave on this one, I'm using the Queen Eleanor bear costume. And again, this dynamic trigger is connected to that as an actor, and the properties are set up the same way on those. So that's, let's see, how many is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where's the other one? Oh, the crystal shard. So in this version of the toy box, I have this connected to locators like you see there. For configuring the wave, I'm using Gonzo, and so on. Now, if you are in the other version of the toy box, which has Tundra Town, and this is going to correspond, the crystal shard will correspond to Elsa's Ice Palace. So you want to put these two controls, the dynamic trigger and the friendly wave generator, over at Elsa's Ice Palace, and spread a few locators around over there. You can put one in maybe in front of the stairs by the Ice Palace. You could put one up on the balcony so the player has to climb the Ice Palace. You could put one across the street, kind of like I've done here, but that's what you're going to do over there. Okay? And again, this is connected over to that as the actor. So that's the setup for each of these 6 locations. Now, the logic connections here, you're going to do the exact same thing for all of these, okay? And actually, I think I'll walk you through these because we'll make sure we do this. So on this one for row number 1, we're going to do a new logic connection. When the collectible is collected by any player, we need to do 2 things. We're going to come over to our eyewitness friendly wave generator and generate the wave. Okay? And we need to turn on the dynamic trigger. When that collectible is collected by any, we need to turn on the dynamic trigger for our witness. Which means we need to turn that off. So we go to the level starter, new logic connection, on catalyze. We need to come over to the dynamic trigger, and turn that off. Make that same connection from the level starter to each of the dynamic triggers for the witnesses. To this one, to the one here at the burger joint, to the one at the cupcake store, to the one at the pizza shop, and the one for the crystal shard, which is either over here or at Tundra Town. The level starter needs to turn all 6 of those off. Okay, so the collectible tracker does that. And I already made those connections from the level starter to those other ones. Row 2, again, corresponds to the cupcake. So on this one, you're going to do a new logic connection. When the collectible is collected by any player, we come over to the cupcake store, generate that wave. And we also need to turn on that dynamic trigger. New logic connection. Find when the collectible is collected by any. Come over and turn on that dynamic trigger. Row number 3 is the burger. So on the collectible tracker for that, new logic connection. When the collectible is collected by any, we come over to this friendly wave generator and generate that wave, which will put our witness over there. And on the collectible tracker for row 3, new logic connection. When the collectible is collected by any, we come over to our dynamic trigger over here and turn that on. Row number 4 is the pizza slice. So on this collectible tracker, new logic connection. When the collectible is collected by any, we come over here to this location, generate the wave for the witness over there, and a new logic connection. When the collectible is collected by any, turn on that dynamic trigger. Row number 5 is the ice cream cone. So a new logic connection. When the collectible is collected by any, generate the witness over here. New logic connection. When the collectible is collected by any, turn on that dynamic trigger. And the last one's for the crystal shard. So a new logic connection. When that collectible is collected by any, we either come over here or to Tundra Town, and we generate that witness. New logic connection. When the collectible is collected by any, turn on this dynamic trigger. And I could have hooked those up ahead of time, but I wanted you to see where those go. Okay. Now on each of these witnesses, the controls for the witnesses, there is one connection you need to make. Okay? Once you've invoked these from the collectible tracker, all you need to do is come to the dynamic trigger and do a new logic connection. When entered by player any, you're going to come over to a logic gate over here and input. Okay? This is the one marked destination on the second logic diagram on my blog. Okay? So you're going to make that same connection from this one to that logic gate, from the one over here at the burger joint, from the one over at the cupcake place, from the one over here at the pizza joint, and the one either over here or at Elsa's Ice Palace. Okay? All of those, that same one logic connection to input into here. And that kicks off phase 3. All right? Okay. Or actually, I guess these do. Well, phase 3 is talking to the witness anyway. Okay, and that is it for the collectibles. The collectibles take you to a specific place where there's going to be a witness to talk to, and when you approach them, it's going to input into this gate. And we're inputting into this gate because every witness is going to do the exact same thing. Okay, so this saves us a ton of logic connections if we're only just connecting into here and letting this drive the conversation with the witness. Okay. All right, so this logic gate is going to do two things. This is the one marked destination. And for this part of it, we have two controls here. We have a randomizer, which will randomly pick what the townsperson, what the witness is going to say, and where they're going to send you. And then we have a cleanup time delayer here, okay? Because now that we're at this point of the game, we can do a little bit of cleanup on everything that's been happening. And in this toy box on this console with the limited memory, we want to do a little cleanup before we get to the weasels. And so on this time delayer, for the properties, we're going to set the delay time to 10 seconds. So it gives the player a little bit of time to move away from the eyewitness. All right. So this time delayer is going to do a few things. First, we're going to do a new logic connection on delay completed. We'll take out the shopkeeper because the player has long since left this area. So we can defeat that wave. The second thing we will do is a new logic connection. When the delay is completed, we're going to input into each and every one of these logic gates. Okay, so make that same connection for each of these. The other 5 logic gates, you're going to input into all of them, and I've already created those logic connections. All right. And I'll come back to those in a minute. That's going to do the cleanup on the collectible. The other thing you want to do is a new logic connection on delay completed. We want to come over to each of the friendly wave generators for the witnesses and defeat those waves. Take the witness out. And since we don't know which witness, or that logic time delayer doesn't know which witness we generated, you want to make that same connection for each of the friendly wave generators at the ice cream shop, the burger joint, the cupcakes place, the pizza joint, and the crystal, which is either Elsa's Ice Palace or over here. And I've already made those connections. Okay, so this is going to do 3 things basically. It's going to clean out the shopkeeper, it's going to clean out the eyewitnesses, it's going to clean out the collectibles. Now, on each of these rows, you're going to make a couple of logic connections. So on the logic gate, you're going to do a new logic connection on output from the gate. You're going to come to the replayer in that row and clear. That will take the collectible out. And on the replayer in that row, a new logic connection on clear. Come back to the logic gate and close it. Okay? Those same 2 connections make for each row. So this logic gate needs to clear this replayer. The replayer closes that gate, and so on. You make those same connections in each row, and I've already done that ahead of time to save time. All right, so that takes care of the cleanup. And so on this logic gate here, this is our destination logic gate. We do a new logic connection on output, and we start that time delayer. And that takes care of our cleanup. The other thing we do on this logic gate is a new logic connection on output. We're going to invoke this randomizer. This is our second randomizer. This is the one labeled destination on the diagram. And the last thing this logic gate needs to do is a new logic connection on output. We want to come over to the dynamic triggers for each of the witnesses and turn those off. So make that same connection from the logic gate, the destination logic gate, to this dynamic trigger, the one at the burger joint, the one at the cupcake place, the one over here at the pizza joint, and the one at the crystal. Hopefully you're following all of this. It's on the logic diagram, and it's pretty straightforward. So if you have that diagram in front of you while I'm doing this, hopefully that helps explain it. Okay, and that is everything for logic diagram number 2. We've made all those connections, and you look at the diagram is very simple, and the logic connections are. It's just there's a lot of duplication because you have 3 rows over here. You've got 6 locations where there's 6 witnesses, and you're just making a lot of the same connections over and over and over again. So I'm trying to not waste your time going through this. I'm trying to go through it in a little bit of a hurried fashion because there's a lot here, but hopefully this is easy to follow. All right, so the last phase of this is when you talk to the eyewitness and they send you to the final destination. And that's what this logic gate is going to do. And there are 7 locations for the possible destination. The first one is over here at the sushi shop. We have the second one is going to be over here at the parking meters in this area. The third is going to be at the gas pumps, which are over here at the Dynaco station. The fourth location will be the telephone pole. The fifth location will be the lifeboats down over here. The sixth location will be the mustard hot dog stand, which is out over here. And the last location is the disco ball, which is over there. And if you have the other version of the toy box, you can go back and watch the final build episode that we had for that version, because I showed you where the alternatives are for places like the ice cream shop and the telephone pole and the rowboats, and where those are in that version of the toy box. At each of these destinations, you have a set of controls. Okay, you have some locators, you have another dynamic trigger, and an enemy wave generator. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to set these up at each location, and there's not much to this. So on the enemy wave generator, we're going to connect each one up to 4 locators. And for this one, I'm going to connect it up to the locators that you see here. And I'm only going to show you this for the first one. I'll show you the results at the other locations when we get done with this one. And if you don't get these locators in exactly the same spot that I have them, that's fine. You can put them in the same ballpark area, or you can put them in different locations if you want. So those are the 4 locators I'm going to use for this enemy wave generator. For the wave, you want to configure this, and I thought I had done this one ahead of time, but I didn't. You want to use the weasels. They're animals, they're wearing clothes. So then come over here and set the count to 4. And on the properties for this, all you're going to do is take the generation delay to 0. Okay? And that one's set up and ready to go. On the dynamic trigger, this one's the one that connects to a locator, and we're going to put this right here at this one in front of the shop. So on the properties for the dynamic trigger, the target needs to be the locator, and I'm going to leave the trigger distance set at 10 because you just want them to approach this location. Okay? And we want those dynamic triggers to be off. So come up to the level starter, do a new logic connection on catalyze, and turn off the dynamic trigger. Okay, so that's the setup for each location. I've already done that here at the disco ball. So this enemy wave generator is connected up to those 2 locators there and these 2 locators over here. And again, it's configured the same way with 4 weasels and the same properties. This dynamic trigger is connected up to that locator in front of that door, and the properties are set the same way as the one we did over at the sushi shop. At the gas pumps, that one is connected up to, that enemy wave generator is connected to those 4 locators here. And it's configured the same way. The dynamic trigger is connected up to a locator in front of the gas pumps. Again, make sure the level starter turns off all of those dynamic triggers. This one's connected up to locators over at those locations. The dynamic trigger is connected up to that locator in front of the telephone poles. There's where those locators are. At the rowboats, this enemy wave generator is connected up to these locators here. And that dynamic trigger is connected up to a locator in front of the rowboats. Again, these are configured the same way as the first one we did. At the parking meters, we have an enemy wave generator connected up to 2 locators there and 2 on either side of that white building across the street. And this dynamic trigger is connected up to that locator in the middle of the street. So when the player approaches this area, that's when that zone kicks off. And the one over here at the hot dog stand, this enemy wave generator is connected up to these 2 locators that I placed here, and I'm reusing 2 locators from the last episode over here. And the dynamic trigger is connected up to this locator in front of the hot dog stand. Okay. So there you go. That's how you set up the controls at each of the 7 destinations. Now, on the randomizer here for picking the destination. Random trigger 1 is going to go to the sushi shop. So we're going to do a new logic connection on random trigger 1. We'll come up to our text displayer. And under the noun category, he's going to say salmon. That's the fish. And there's fish this guy's holding. It looks like salmon. And so that's why we're using that. And on random trigger here, on the randomizer, new logic connection on random trigger 1, we come over to the dynamic trigger at this location and turn that on. Okay? On the randomizer over here, new logic connection on random trigger 2, we come up to our text displayer. And under the noun category, he's going to say parking meter. So on random trigger 2 on the randomizer here, again, that's the destination randomizer. We come over to the parking meters and we turn on this dynamic trigger. And again, by the way, these are new controls. I think I mentioned that, but yeah, these are new controls. They aren't part of the burning building. They aren't part of the car chase. All right, for random trigger 3 on our destination randomizer, new logic connection, random trigger 3, we come up to the text displayer. And under the noun category, he's going to say gas pump. And so random trigger 3 on this randomizer needs to turn on the dynamic trigger over here at the gas pumps. All right, random trigger 4 on our destination randomizer. We come up to our text displayer, go to the noun category. This time he's going to say telephone pole. So random trigger 4 on the randomizer. We'll go over to the telephone pole and turn on that dynamic trigger. At the destination randomizer, new logic connection on random trigger 5. Go to the text displayer, go down to the noun category, and this time he's going to say lifeboat. New logic connection on random trigger 5. We come over here to the lifeboats and we turn on that dynamic trigger. New logic connection on random trigger 6 on the destination randomizer. Come up to text displayer, go to the noun category. This time he's going to say mustard. And on random trigger 6 on the destination randomizer, we go over to the only place in the toy box where there's any mustard, which is the hot dog stand. And we turn on that dynamic trigger. You can see there are little mustard bottles there on that toy. All right, and the final possible destination on the destination randomizer, random trigger 7, we come up to our text displayer, go to the noun category, and select disco ball. And on the destination randomizer, on random trigger 7, we go turn on the dynamic trigger over here at the discotheque. Okay, so that's how that routes the player randomly to one of 7 locations. Now, at each of these locations, there are 3 logic connections you need to make. I've already done all of the other 6. I'm just going to show you how to do this one. Okay? So the first connection you need to do, and again, this is on your logic diagram, the third logic diagram there, if you're following along. This dynamic trigger does a new logic connection when entered by player, any. So when the player approaches this area, we generate the wave. That puts the weasels into the toy box. And we only want to do this once. So on the enemy wave generator, new logic connection, when the wave is generated, turn off the dynamic trigger again. Okay? So those are the first 2 of the 3 logic connections. The third one is on the enemy wave generator. Do a new logic connection. When this wave is defeated, come over to our final logic gate over here, the one that's kind of standing by itself, and input. This is the mission end logic gate on the diagram. Okay? So make those same 3 connections with those 2 controls, the same 3 connections for those 2 controls, and at each of the other locations here, the telephone poles, over at the rowboats, over at the parking meters, over at the mustard stand, hot dog stand. Okay? Those same 3 connections on those controls. And when the wave is defeated on any of those, you input into this gate. All right? And I've already made those connections, as you can see. Now on this logic gate, this is where we handle the end of the mission. And there's 3 things we want to do. So we're going to do a new logic connection on output from this gate. We will stop the smoke at the store. So we'll stop looping the effects. A new logic connection on output. From that gate, we come up to our action enforcer. We're going to have all the players celebrate because they've solved the case. And whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do all, not just triggering player. So let's come down and edit that logic connection. On output, we celebrate all. All right, and the third thing the logic gate here needs to do on output, we'll come up to our sound effect generator up here and play the end of mission flourish, which is musical fanfare. Okay, and that is everything. All right, let me take a moment here to review the logic connections before I test this out. And yeah, I think that's everything. Let's just go ahead and try it out and see what happens. And I think, actually, let me go ahead and save my game here first, and then I'll be back in a moment and I'll do this. Okay, let's go ahead and try this out. Oh, and be sure to press the button by the level starter in order to initialize everything. Townsperson's generated. He's got a radar marker. He's jumping up and down. We walk up to him. He says, "I need your help." And now we look around for a clue. We don't know what might have been generated out here. We have the pizza slice. All right, so the pizza slice takes us over to this building. And here's a witness we can talk to. She says disco ball. So now we'll head over to the discotheque. So I know this was a long episode today. There was a lot to hook up, but hopefully you can see it wasn't too difficult. It's just there's a lot of connections. All right, so we get over here. And, uh-oh, bad guys. And there we go. That is the end of the mission. So that's how the logic works for the mystery solving mechanic in my Zootopia toy box. Next time, I'm going to show you how to build a second break-in case like this that reuses much of this logic so that you can create as many of these kinds of cases as you want in your toy box. Because we spent a lot of time hooking all of this up, we should get some mileage out of it. So we're going to set up another case that reuses this, and I'll show you how to do that so that you can create as many of these as you want. Until then, I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my video today. If so, please hit the like button and leave a comment to let me know. My logic videos don't typically get as many views or comments as my other videos, so I always appreciate it when you let me know that you're watching. Also, before you go, if you've not yet subscribed to my channel, just click my photo in the lower right corner of this video. Take care, and I'll see you next time.